Hello from Florida. Welcome to Tony and Leona Live. I'm Tony.
I'm Leona.
We're very thankful to have you guys all here today. We got an exciting show. Today is Thursday, November 18th, and we're going to be talking about a lot of topics, a lot of headlines that will keep you in the know. So thank you for joining us.
Yes. Today we're going to talk about a Texas church that is under fire over Let's Go Brandon Chance caught on video. We're also going to talk about implications and rumors that Vice President Kamala Harris could get replaced.
Wow.
Big deal, if true. We will talk about a challenge to Biden's employee vaccine mandate, which was sent to an Ohio-based Sixth Circuit and was decided with a ping pong ball.
How's that happen?
We will find out. 1/3 of healthcare workers are not vaccinated.
In the
Look
country.
into that, apparently. Boston MedFlight Transportation Service is currently forced to take patients out of state due to hospital bed shortages. So we will find out from CBS Local what the causes are of those hospital bed shortages happening right now. We're going to start with some good news.
Well, before we get into that, we should welcome all our Twitter viewers.
Yes.
This is the first time that we're streaming on Twitter, so we're also on Twitch and YouTube. Tony and Leona on Instagram. We certainly appreciate it if you like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us out, helps us to grow the show. Every show we strive to make it better than the last one.
Continuing to.
And I noticed from the last show, this is kind of embarrassing, but you could hear me breathing a little bit on the microphone. I don't know.
Stop breathing during the show.
The other thing too, I didn't say this before, but one of my biggest flexes from the pandemic in 2020 is I learned how to cut hair. So I actually learned how to cut my own hair. I cut our kids' hair. The first haircuts were pretty goofy, but I did notice.
He even gave our daughter her very first and thus far only haircut.
Yeah. And last week when I was giving my haircut, I was shaving my eyebrows a little bit, and I zoomed the clippers a little too close. I almost had a line there, so I was making sure that it grows back. My hair grows back pretty fast, so
you don't have to buy some eyebrow makeup.
But it saves money,
It does.
Learning how to cut hair, it saves us money, and I
Now
also
I'm the
don't
only
like.
money drain in
I've
the
never
family.
liked going to the haircut place. Same with the dentist. I don't like scheduling something where I'm gonna have to sit in a chair for too long. I can barely sit in the chair for as long as he shows, but. But yeah, it's what's your biggest flex from the pandemic? I know people picked up new talents. If you want to put in the comments, what's your biggest flex talent or something you accomplished from the 2020 pandemic? So
I like that question.
But yeah,
I would
we
love
like
to hear.
Yeah, and we're going to start the show. We want the show to be positive. We want to give people hope and inspiration. We want to focus on facts, science, information that'll bring clarity in this time where it's not so easy to determine what's true and
I would
what's
say
not.
facts within context. I don't think there's anyone who's literally sharing lies, but a statement without well, maybe some people, but a statement without context can be very misleading. So I don't think it's that, oh, we're trying to share facts and other people aren't, but sharing facts within context, not just from one certain point of view, but like kind of looking at the whole broad picture.
Yeah. And it's, I think about this. It sometimes seems extremely stressful to live in these times. A lot of confusion about what's going on, uncertainty about how long COVID's going to be around, a lot of economic uncertainty, inflation running through the roof. But at the same time, it's exciting to be alive during this time because this is a transformational period. It's going to define the next 50 years, if not longer, about what happens and what transpires during this time. So,
and the way each of us acts will affect that for future generations, for better, for worse, I think.
And we were talking earlier before we went live about what we want to accomplish with the show. And really, we're trying to reach out to everyday people, people like us, parents, Christians, Catholics, people maybe who aren't so political but have become awakened over the last couple years. They know something's wrong or something doesn't feel right. And we want to empower people because we are actually succeeding in many ways, and we want to focus on that. We have some small victories that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but every part matters, and this is the time that we all need to come together. It really doesn't even matter about your political ideology. I think more and more people are going to find out that it's the people that have to stick together, the people who want to be free and want to pass freedom and liberty and opportunities on for our children, so that 20 years from now they have the same freedoms that we had.
And for the children of strangers, like it's not just, it's truly for all.
So the best analogy that I could come up with was like a football game. You know, with football is one of the greatest sports in the world, especially created by America. One of the reasons why it's so great, though, is because it's a diverse sport. You need players of all sizes, shapes, strengths. You have the punters, the kickers, the big linemen, the defensive linemen. You have the strong linebackers. You need speed. You need tall wide receivers who could run really fast. And you need a fullback and the quarterback. But then even bigger with the football game, you have the fans. You have the people who hold the first down markers. You have the referees, you have cheerleaders, you have the technical people, you have the announcers. The main point,
Concessions,
though,
my
concession
personal favorite.
stands. You know, the main point, though, is we want to empower you to figure out what your role is in this remarkable period in history that you can do to apply your talents to further freedom, and so that we win this battle of good at the end of the day, that good prevails over evil, that freedom wins over enslavement. And not everybody can do a live stream, maybe. We barely can, believe that or not, but find what you can do. Not everybody can speak out, or not everybody wants to go to a protest, or you may not be able to speak your mind because of your job, but there's something that everybody can do. You can go to protest, you can support a candidate, you can contribute to a campaign, you can volunteer, you can go to a school board meeting, you can
be in a parade with your kids.
Call your state representatives, call your state senators, your U.S. senators, get them on the line and voice your concerns, get them to put on the record what you want, because these types of things matter. You don't always have to do these huge things. You know, even being a fan of the show, or liking or subscribing to the videos, you know, that certainly helps too. So starting with the good news here out of Florida, pretty exciting. We talked about this yesterday, but in Brandon, Florida, of all places, Governor DeSantis, he signed into law a bill limiting vaccine mandates. So this was a direct pushback against the Biden vaccination mandates that are being or will be enforced through OSHA unless the courts knock it down. But Leona, if you want to read a little more about what we have with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So Governor DeSantis says, quote, "Nobody should lose their jobs because of these COVID jabs." After a 3-day special session challenging vaccine mandates for businesses and schools, Governor Ron DeSantis signed 4 bills into law Thursday morning, today, aimed at reining in those requirements. Nobody should lose their job because of these COVID jabs, DeSantis said during the press conference in Brandon, Florida. The most contentious measure would prevent private businesses from having vaccine mandates unless they allow workers to opt out for medical reasons, religious beliefs, immunity based on a previous infection, regular testing, or an agreement to wear protective gear. What President Biden is doing is not constitutional, DeSantis emphasized. There has never been a federal vaccine mandate imposed on the public. They don't have the power to do it. There is no federal police power.
So yeah, he signed that into law today, which is pretty amazing, pretty remarkable. And I wanted to read this other quote from him, if you want to read that underneath.
Yeah, so we read about what he signed into law. Quote, "We're making sure that people have a right to earn a living. People have a right to have protections in their place of employment, and that parents have protections to be able to direct the upbringing of their kids," DeSantis said to Cheers. I would cheer too.
Yeah, that's why people love Governor DeSantis in Florida.
Yeah.
and he's standing up for freedom, standing up for choice. You know, he's not an anti-vaxxer by no means.
No.
He was vaccinated. He's a proponent of the vaccines. He's done a lot to get people in Florida vaccinated. Florida has similar vaccination rates as any other blue
Both
state,
Minnesota
pretty much,
and
except
California.
So he's done just a wonderful job in the state. So we're very grateful and proud to call him our governor.
Yeah.
So what else do we have for today?
So why don't we talk about Let's Go Brandon in the Texas church?
So this is a story, where is it, out of Texas?
Yes, this was Fox 5.
So here's the picture of the congregation, and this story made headlines, and the video got over 2 million views because people in the church were, they started chanting, "Let's go, Brandon."
So according to Fox 5, a Texas church is coming under fire over a video showing people inside the place of worship chanting the viral anti-Biden phrase, "Let's go, Brandon," a euphemism for, less than well wishes for the President of the United States, and it has become a kind of a radical conservative rallying cry. Oklahoma pastor Jeremy Coleman said of the video showing people within the non-denominational Cornerstone Church in San Antonio chanting the phrase. The video of the people chanting, as Tony said, has more than 2 million views on Twitter. Church officials said the chant did not occur during services. This past week, Cornerstone Church facilities were used by an outside organization. Cornerstone Church is not associated with this organization and does not endorse their views, the church said in a statement. The church held a quote-unquote Reawaken America conference from November 11th to the 13th.
So people were outraged, first of all, because they thought it was during a church service. So it definitely was not done during a church service.
Or even if it wasn't a church service, that perhaps it was like a church-sponsored event.
Yeah, and it was a political event in the church, which still got people up in arms. Joaquin Castro, he chimed in with his tweet here. He said, "This is not a church service, it's a political rally. It's also a prime example of why more people are turned off by and leaving organized religion," according to Joaquin Castro. And he's I think that's, was he the one who ran for president, or was that his brother?
I think it was his brother.
Was his brother?
I think.
So, oh yeah, he's a congressman.
Yeah.
So it's kind of misleading, his tweet there, because again, it wasn't during a church service, but it does bring some interesting points just about the role of church. I mean, I know that I've seen churches that have had political events.
Well, we were at a church in the Twin Cities when we lived there, and during Mass, during the homily...
Was this during a campaign year? This was during an election year?
Yes, it was a presidential election year. And during the homily, it was Obama's, prior to Obama's second term. And during the homily, the priest said that there would be a rally, or a fundraiser, not a rally, a fundraiser for Obama in the basement of the church right after Mass.
That's right.
So that was during Mass that he told us this. And I actually was so surprised that I went downstairs to see if that's really what it was. And it was. I mean, I didn't say anything rude. I just was like, "Hi, what's happening?" And that's what it was, right in the basement of the church after Mass.
What do you think? I think clearly with the law, churches, religions in the United States, they're tax exempt. They don't have to pay taxes. One of the reasons or requirements of keeping this exempt status, they don't pay income tax, they don't pay property tax, but churches can't be involved in politics, especially partisan politics. So I would even say that this church shouldn't have had the rally, this rally after hours or whenever they did, unless maybe they rented out the building and had no affiliation with it. But I doubt that that's the case. So, and then it brings up questions: should churches even have a tax exempt status? I kind of go both ways on this. I'm not quite sure they should or shouldn't.
You have advocated for them not having a tax exempt status in the past, and I think it's a good point. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, churches' hands are kind of tied because they have to follow these things because of tax exempt status and things like that." And you've been like, "Well, their hands shouldn't be tied."
I mean, I think we should all be tax exempt at the end of the day. We pay way too much in taxes, and really, I don't think individuals especially should pay income tax on their labor. Corporations, maybe not, but That being said, in the system that we're in right now, I don't know. We should have a show about that
Yeah.
and debate. Should taxes have tax exempt status?
Yeah. Should churches have tax
Or
exempt
churches,
status?
yep,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's a good question.
So what's the next topic?
So let's talk about Kamala Harris.
Hmm.
If there's any truth to these rumors.
Ooh, yeah, this was a big one. You summarize.
Yeah. So Fox News host Jesse Waters suggests Kamala could be replaced as vice president amid reports of new high-profile confirmation hearings in D.C. So,
Here we go. Right here.
all right. So this is what Jesse Waters from Fox News said.
So he implied on Tuesday that Biden may be considering removing Kamala Harris from the vice presidency. Our Capitol Hill correspondent tells us he's been hearing whispers suggesting there could be some new high-profile confirmation hearings, he said. He touched on reports over the weekend that the Biden-Harris post-election bliss had worn out due to Kamala's awkward laugh and low approval. On Monday, Biden and Harris had to put up a united front when they stepped out of the White House to sign the president's trillion-dollar infrastructure bill. Harris's aides complained that on the issues that she has been given control over, she doesn't have White House backing to follow through. Isn't she the border czar? I don't think she's followed through with that at all. Meanwhile, Biden's staff are privately disappointed with Harris over self-inflicted controversies, CNN reported. So a lot of people don't even know that you can actually remove the vice president. But
That was my question when I heard these rumors. I just wanted to read at the bottom of this article. So again, from Jesse Waters, he says, our Capitol Hill correspondent Chad Pergram tells us he's been hearing whispers suggesting there could be some new high-profile confirmation hearings, which is what you said. But this is maybe why it might be more than just a rumor, because the House does not confirm normal nominees. It does confirm vice presidential nominees. So does this have something to do with Kamala Harris? We don't know, right? This is all we know. Just
no,
these
but we're
reports.
gonna be watching this. Some people have suggested that Buttigieg might be the one to replace him, but the administration's approval ratings are at all-time lows. And we're not trying to give disrespect to the Biden administration or Joe Biden. I don't think it's unfair to point out that he's deteriorating or aging fast. He's made many blunders. His memory appears to be sometimes problematic, and he sometimes rambles incoherently. And I think he's suffered from some past medical issues and current. Some we're not privy to exactly what it is, but it just seems obvious. So it begs the question: is Biden going to run again for re-election in 2024? And with their approval ratings being as low as they are, I saw that Harris's approval rating is in the 20s. It's like 25%. He was in 30s, I think.
Okay.
And then Joe Biden is right around Trump's lowest point. So
And I
neither
know
of them
Trump
are doing
ran
great.
again.
It's only the first year. We're not even done with year one.
Right.
And if the Democrats are getting nervous because if they're going to try to win the presidency or keep it in 2024, they're starting to realize they're going to need a new strategy. I'm not sure. I think they thought Harris was going to be much more popular with the American people than she has turned out to be.
I mean, Trump had low approval ratings, and he still got the second most votes of any presidential candidate ever in 2020. So I don't know. Part of me is like, it's sort of silly to think this is such a big deal. Like, I don't know, right? And like you said, sure, this is only the beginning, but also this is only the beginning. So much can happen in the next 3 years. So I guess or 2 years. I don't necessarily think like, oh, this is catastrophic for them necessarily. I don't know. But I've never paid that much attention to ratings. I know this isn't necessarily based in
The
statistics.
politicians do, though.
Yeah. But until I meet even one person in real life who has ever been polled on any of this, or until I myself am polled, I just am stuck in this world of like, who even answers these polls? I've never once met someone who is polled in them.
I think I've gotten a couple.
Oh, have you? Okay. So I'm married to someone who's been polled, so maybe I should trust them.
So ping pong, you mentioned the ping pong ball.
Ping pong,
How
yes.
on earth was the
So-
mandate case or the circuit court decided by a ping pong?
Right. So this is from U.S. News. Kaya Hubbard. Challenge to Biden's employee vaccine mandate sent to Ohio-based Sixth Circuit decided, we will find out, in a ping pong ball lottery. A conservative-leaning appeals court was selected to hear a singular challenge to the Biden administration's vaccine requirement for private companies. The Sixth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals will hear a consolidated challenge to the Biden admin's vaccine requirement for employees of large companies after lawsuits were brought in courts throughout the country challenging the rule. The selection was made Tuesday at random, determined by the bounce of a ping pong ball lottery, abiding by a federal law that stipulates that if the same challenge is brought to multiple courts, it should be combined into a single case, and a lottery system should be employed to select a singular court to hear the case. The allocation comes after the Fifth Circuit kept a block against the vaccine rule in place Friday, calling the rule a quote-unquote one-size-fits-all sledgehammer.
So this is like the second time that in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, of course, the judge allowed Kyle, the murder defendant, to pick his own, or pick the jurors who weren't going to serve out of a raffle.
Yeah, he picked 6
But
out.
this
so
has been done.
Remaining,
this is how
right?
they choose. This was a congressional.
I never knew.
I don't know if it's a law, but Congress oversees this, and this is how they choose these circuit courts for appeals.
That's
so luckily,
crazy.
or fortunately for people who are on the side of freedom, the Sixth Circuit was chosen. And did you talk about the judges there?
No, not yet.
Okay.
The decision made by the Fifth Circuit, which has a reputation for being one of the country's most conservative, is now set to be reviewed by the Sixth Circuit. Even so, the Sixth Circuit is made up of a majority of judges appointed by Republican presidents, with 6 of its 16 judges nominated by former President Donald Trump. He appointed like the most judges. I don't remember the time frame, but he appointed a lot. For over a century, the U.S. Supreme Court has recognized that policies on compulsory vaccination lie within the police powers of the states filings say. The federal government lacks constitutional authority under its enumerated powers to issue this mandate. But opposition to the requirement had been gearing up for months. 24 Republican state attorneys general in a letter after the rule's initial announcement in September urged the president to reconsider his decision to require companies with more than 100 employees to mandate vaccinations or frequent coronavirus testing for workers, calling the plan quote-unquote disastrous and counterproductive. GOP governors were quick to respond at the onset of the rule's announcement as well. Texas Governor Greg Abbott called the requirement an assault on private businesses, while Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts called it a stunning violation of personal freedom and abuse of the federal government's power. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem tweeted that her state will stand up to defend freedom, telling Biden, "See you in court."
Wow.
Crazy, right?
It is. It's going to be interesting to see how fast this proceeds and exactly. I'm not an expert about how this is going to proceed and how it actually gets up to the Supreme Court. Maybe we should look into that more.
That'd be good to know.
And report on it later. But regardless, as we said earlier, Governor DeSantis signed a bill into law today in Florida that it very much weakens the OSHA regulation, even if it does go through.
Yeah.
So just keep pushing back, guys. Keep speaking up. Keep talking to your friends, because one of the things that they've tried to do is censor and blackball the dissent in this issue over mandates and vaccinations. And they're trying to create this perception that anyone who is against the mandate or may have questions about the vaccine, that they're so far in the minority or so far in the fringe that nobody is paying attention to you or that your voice doesn't matter, but it actually does.
It does matter,
And we're winning. So this is the time not to sit back and relax. It's time to keep the foot on the accelerator and keep pushing forward. So speak out to your employers or talk to your manager if you can, if it's not going to risk your job, but just let them know that there's many, 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 many people who are on the side of being against these mandates for an experimental
even
procedure.
If you are vaccinated yourself or will be, or fully support other people's right to choose that, as I absolutely do, you can still be against these mandates, certainly from the federal government. I kind of would hope we're at least in agreement on that, but I'm not sure we are as a country, which is fine. I respect those with different views, but there are a lot of us who absolutely do not think the federal government should be mandating
and we're getting
this.
censored from the internet. People are getting silenced and ridiculed, and a lot of people are afraid to speak out or they don't want to lose their jobs. But just remember, there are a lot of us, so it's time to keep to keep moving forward on all
Yeah.
of this. So stay strong, people.
Yes.
Stay strong.
So Forbes put out an article that nearly 1/3 of healthcare workers in U.S. hospitals are still not vaccinated against COVID-19.
Wow.
Based on a
That's
study
an amazing statistic.
from the
This was in the
CDC.
headlines today, so this was all over the place. Can
Yeah,
you
this
believe
is
that?
today.
1/3 of healthcare workers in U.S. hospitals are still not vaccinated.
So as of September 15th, 70% of healthcare workers were fully vaccinated against COVID-19, according to the CDC study of more than 3 million personnel across more than 2,000 U.S. hospitals. This was published in the American Journal of Infection Control. Rates varied based on the type of hospital, the researchers found, with the highest vaccination rates found in children's hospitals, where 77% of workers have both doses. Critical access hospitals had the lowest vaccination rate, with 64% of workers fully vaccinated, the researchers found. I'll keep going, but that in and of itself is interesting. I don't say this with any disrespect or again thinking that people shouldn't have made this choice, but when I was working in California last December,
So
of
Leona was,
2020,
for those of you who don't know, for our new viewers on Twitter now, Leona, she was an ICU nurse who came out of semi-retirement, ran home with the kids.
I was home with our kids
When
and
the
then went back to
pandemic
work.
hit, Leona
Yeah.
volunteered. She got her license to go out to New York City when it was the worst there. Then went down to Florida. Our whole family traveled with her, and then in California, El
Yeah,
Centro.
all of us also went to
So
California.
she's worked with many COVID patients.
Yeah. And
Sadly.
when I was in California, that's when the vaccine first became available for the public. At that time, it was mostly people in high risk situations. And I remember sitting in the ICU with many other nurses and some doctors around, quite a few respiratory therapists. And someone from the hospital came through and said, like, you guys can all get the COVID vaccine tomorrow. And some people were, definitely planning to get it right away. A lot of people were like, we've been very close to this virus since April, in some cases even March. Not for me, I started in New York in April, but we've been caring for people and in very close contact with the bodily fluids of people who have COVID-19. And
Many of them were infected.
yes. And so that was one thing. Like, well, first we want to see what our immunity currently is, because we've been around this so much. And we know that this vaccine is new. I don't know if it's necessarily, a lot of people say experimental. I'm not sure it's more experimental than any other new therapy. I mean, it went through the normal routes that new interventions go through. Still, the data or the study will not officially be done. We went over this in one of our episodes for when each of the studies will be done. I think Moderna or Pfizer will be 2022, and then the other one will be 2023. But still, they've gone through FDA approval like new treatments do. So I don't know if it's experimental, but it's certainly very new. And never before have I, like, on the form that I filled out for our children this year for school, it says, you check a box if they have been infected, not with COVID, but with the other things that are on the CDC's vaccination schedule. If they have a prior infection, you don't vaccinate them against that. So that in and of itself was so interesting. All of us were like,
It was
why
a
would we
major
immediately
change
get
with
it?
this one.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm making this too long. But what's so interesting, and I'm not putting down these choices, but looking back in Minnesota, so many of my pediatric colleagues, because prior to COVID and prior to staying home with my children, when I was working, I was a pediatric nurse before COVID. And so it seemed that all of those nurses were absolutely getting vaccinated as soon as possible. So it doesn't surprise me, this rate that we just read in this Forbes article,
So
that more
1/3
pediatric hospitals are
1/3 of all,
vaccinated
is
than
it
not.
hospital workers?
It
Is that what
said
it says?
1/3 of hospital workers overall, but it says that the CDC found that the most vaccinated where staff is most vaccinated is in children's hospitals. Critical access hospitals had the lowest vaccination rate. So I would just say anecdotally, it lines up with what I experienced in California, how nurses, doctors, and respiratory therapists were responding to the vaccine there, and then how pediatric nurses were responding.
Do you want to read
Truly
the
not
next
making
part?
a judgment. Yep. Vaccination rates also differed by location, with healthcare staff in metropolitan counties, 71%, having higher vaccination rates than those in rural counties, 65.
It's not surprising, but that's actually not that big of a difference either.
65 to 71. Yeah. And then vaccine uptake also varied dramatically over time, the researchers found, jumping from 36% to 60% in the 4 months between January and April, a 24-point jump. but taking 5 months to reach 70% by September.
That makes sense in a way.
Half of that jump, 5%, in vaccination happened in the month between August and September, something the authors said could be due to the spread of the Delta coronavirus variant or mandates in some jurisdictions.
Probably mandates. I mean, so it sounds like, and this was kind of what you would expect, the vaccines become available, there's a rush. All the people who have been waiting for them go
Yep.
out to get it. The ones who are hesitant don't get it.
Or just are like, ah.
The mandates are announced, or hospitals announce mandates, and people.
Some will get them for that reason.
But then others potentially choose not to get it.
Yep.
And that's what we're starting to see are some of the ill effects of these mandates.
Yep.
And there's actually, I think, a lot more people. It's hard to know exactly how many people have lost their job
Yeah.
because they did not want to get the shot.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever know those numbers. One of the things that is done by these corporations, and you've seen it with hospitals and even government, like cities,
I know
they'll
what you're
say,
gonna say.
you know, that we have 60% of our employees who are vaxxed, and then the mandate deadline approaches, and they get all the way up to 80, 90% or 95. Well, it's because people are getting fired.
Yeah.
So
It's really
their
sad.
percentage of hired or active employees are obviously that who had the shot is going to
Right.
go up.
Right.
If you're reducing or eliminating the ones who chose not to.
Yeah.
So it's misleading, but it's also hard to say.
It is,
I
yeah.
saw another article right next to that. Only 60% of the airport TSA employees have the shot. So there's
Interesting.
40% of TSA employees who are still holding out for
Interesting.
whatever reasons. But shortages is a major consequence, especially we already have a labor shortage.
Yeah.
So the effects of these mandates are for the people who are choosing that they don't want it and they would sacrifice their job for it. We're starting to see those shortages come in play.
Absolutely.
In Minnesota and in other areas. We're going to focus on Boston.
So according to Boston CBS Local, Boston MedFlight, which is a company that provides transportation via chopper, plane, and ambulance, is forced to take patients out of state due to hospital bed shortage. This is by Ken McLeod. Instead, they went to hospitals in neighboring states, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. It's not a great solution, Hughes says, particularly for the patient's family when you tell them, yes, we have a bed, but it's in Connecticut. Boston MedFlight, a nonprofit that shuttled 5,700 patients last year by chopper, plane, and ground ambulance, is calling attention to the troublesome, quote-unquote, perfect storm that's filling local hospital beds, and not just in the intensive care ward. Experts say COVID-19 is a fraction of the problem, but not the problem itself. For starters, Boston MedFlight is carrying much sicker patients these days, and more of them, because so many people put off getting medical care for their health issues during the pandemic.
And this is happening in hospitals all across the world. I've seen reports in Germany that their hospitals are they're very busy right now. They're having shortages, resource shortages. It's not because of COVID per se, even though COVID's surging there. It's because people are going in there for other reasons.
Yeah.
Same with Australia. When they finally opened back up after being locked down for 2 years or almost 2 years in some spots, the hospitals had a rush
Yeah.
of all these people who had delayed getting treatments. So there's another factor though too, and the mental health crisis.
Yep. Two other factors. What we're seeing, says CEO Hughes, is a high volume of critically ill patients. The second factor is seriously understaffed hospitals. Almost 1 in 5 healthcare workers have quit since the spring of 2020. 500,000 quit just
Wow.
this past August of 2021 alone, according to the U.S. Labor Department. I will let
So
each
1
of
in
you draw
5
your own
healthcare
conclusions,
workers have quit since the spring of 2020.
but 500,000 just the August of 2021.
Wow.
The third reason, there's a mental health crisis, with hospitals finding themselves, unfortunately, on the front lines. The emergency rooms are taking care of those patients, says Hughes, but they really need psychiatric care, not medical care.
A lot of unintended consequences here.
Yes. And a lot of things that a lot of people were saying would happen, frankly. And I think it's good that each person has different biases and fears and experiences and strengths and is going to focus on different things. That's good. What what was not good during this pandemic is that the people who are bringing up these concerns that would happen, that seem so obvious, many of them were called pretty awful things for bringing up these concerns, which is mind-blowing to me because they have happened so clearly. They will continue to happen. We don't even know for how many years this will negatively impact people. And now, as COVID is surging in much of our country, those with COVID will not receive the care that they should because of problems that we caused with vaccine mandates, with decreasing mental health in our whole country, and with not allowing for proper preventative care or care within appropriate timeframes, which is leading to people being more sick in general.
What's a shame, when the pandemic first came out, everybody was behind the frontline workers, the nurses, the emergency room physicians, the ICU staff, the hospital staff, even beyond the front lines in the healthcare system, people who worked in sanitation, the grocery stores, all the essential workers that were face to face when there was so much uncertainty. We asked people, the policemen, the firefighters, the EMT, first responders,
Those
they
who
were
pick
all
up trash,
face to face.
recycling,
And interestingly, you see some of the largest hesitancy from the people who are in the front lines. And there's many, many different reasons for that. But the real shame is we asked them to put their life at risk to take care of patients who were highly infectious, contagious, and they didn't think twice about it. They survived. Many of them were infected. Some people died, sadly.
Which is very sad.
Many, many were infected. And this is true of the general population as well. So to all of a sudden mandate something that they've already proven that they're able to handle through their own bodily defenses, and to take a leap of faith into doing this without any appreciation or respect or choice, or being denied exemptions, it's a shame. And it's something that when we look back on this time, I think it's going to reflect very poorly on this time.
Yeah.
Because
It's
these
shocking
people
to me, actually.
are
I
heroes.
Yeah, it's crazy. Sorry.
And I brought this analogy up before too, is we seen something similar with the first responders of the September 11th attacks. The people who helped clean up, who were digging through the rubble, digging through the burning
Who
ashes
ran into the building
of the World
to try
Trade
to save
Centers.
people.
There's months of cleanup after that, and there's
Yeah.
people, New Yorkers and people from all over the country, who volunteered to go there, and they suffered various lung conditions, respiratory diseases, cancers. There was ash smoldering from the burning buildings for months, I believe,
Yeah.
a couple months it was burning
Yeah.
for. But all the toxins that they were exposed to, many people died. Many of them are still suffering today, and they got thrown under the bus. They were told they were liars or they were exaggerating it. It took them forever to get any sort of recognition or compensation for it. And it's a shame that we do that as a country. And it's similar to our United States soldiers too. We have a tendency to throw our heroes that serve in uniform under the bus
I have
too.
actually seen people say that.
And this has happened for decades. This
Yeah.
isn't something new.
I've actually seen a meme that says that like a soldier who doesn't want to get this vaccine, like a soldier is telling a doctor, like, I will take a bullet for my countrymen, and the doctor's like, you won't even take a shot, like you're nothing. And it's so shocking to me. Like, are these people saying, and again, I'm not against, like, I sometimes wish I could share conversations I've had with people face to face. I never have advocated that nobody should get this vaccine by any means. In fact, for some people, quite the opposite. But is this meme insinuating or even directly saying that choosing to vaccinate yourself is not only the same as, but is actually more heroic than a soldier who is willing to literally potentially lay their life down in a way that none of us, including me as a nurse going into the pandemic, most of us have never done for strangers in our own country and strangers abroad. The children that they sometimes help abroad, like, that's shocking.
There's a lot of false arguments and straw man arguments. I've seen another one. I think it was Chris Rock, who he actually was infected and he was fully vaccinated, still infected, and he got somewhat sick. He wasn't just like asymptomatic case. and he went on TV and advocated, and he made I think he was joking but serious at the same time. He's like, you don't know what's in a Big Mac, and you eat a Big Mac,
Yeah.
and people have made the same point. You don't know what's in Tylenol or.
Yeah.
Well, there's some big differences. Nobody's forcing me to eat that Big Mac. Nobody's forcing me, putting a choice before me, either take my job or take that tab of Tylenol. Like, we have choice.
You can't
We have
worship in your
freedom.
synagogue or church
So
or
these
mosque
are not,
unless you eat a Big Mac.
These are not equivalent arguments by no means.
Also, Big Macs are not good for you, and that is very well documented. So
They're also not
maybe you
terrible
don't know
for you,
everything in them, but like,
Or,
we know
or
they're
somebody
not
told
great
me
for you.
sugar-free gum. You don't know what's in sugar. Well, I don't chew sugar-free gum, and nobody's forcing me to do it.
Yeah.
And nobody's making me mandating it from the government.
Yeah,
So,
but I don't consume artificial sweeteners because I have read studies and know enough to know that they're not good for you. So like when people, I just think there's I agree with what you're saying, but there's another element to those straw man arguments too. I do know some of what's in those things. They are not good for you. Never, ever would I force someone to put those into their bodies. So, and I choose to not put them in. I mean, I don't know.
so it's day 3 now of jury deliberations for the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
Yeah.
There's still no decision that's been made. Tomorrow, maybe we'll hear something back. I know the jury's come back and forth, but there was a big news breaking story that came out today, and I'm going to let the Judge Schroeder tell
Let
the
him
story
speak
here.
for himself.
Yeah,
This is
turn
crazy.
this on here. But it was with MSNBC. Okay, I'll just set it up. MSNBC
Bluetooth connected.
had somebody follow the jury bus. So when the jury is done for the day, they get on a bus. This was yesterday, and a reporter followed the bus.
That's so
And
unbelievable.
I guess went through a red light, got pulled over, and they found out he was from MSNBC. So we're just going to play this clip here, though. So this
That's
is Judge
crazy,
Schroeder.
right?
Yeah, it is. So here it is right here.
Received a report this morning from the Kenosha Police Department that last evening, and let me just set this background here. The jury in this case is being transported from a different location in a bus with the windows covered so that they don't have to look at aren't exposed to any signs by one side or another or interest in the case. And so I'm going to call it a sealed bus. And that's been done every day. And then they're brought here to this building. And last evening, a person who identified himself as James J. Morrison and who claimed that he was a producer with NBC News, employed for MSNBC, and under the supervision of a person, what's going on? Oh, okay. Under the supervision of someone named Irene Bayan in New York for MSNBC. The police, when they stopped him because he was following at a distance of about a block and went through a red light, pulled him over and inquired of him what was going on, and he gave that information and stated that he had been instructed by Ms. Bayan in New York to follow the jury bus. The matter is under further investigation at this point, and the media has asked questions about it. That's the latest I have. And he was ticketed for violating a traffic control signal. He's not here today from what I'm told, and I have instructed that no one from MSNBC News will be permitted in this building for the duration of this trial.
So that's pretty significant. He's banning MSNBC from going to the trial. MSNBC did respond. They said that this particular journalist was a contracted photographer, so he wasn't an employee of MSNBC,
Okay.
but he was hired by them. And what this contractor said is that the producer, a big producer at MSNBC, was having him follow the jury bus.
That's crazy.
So
Crazy.
yeah, the crowds are getting bigger by the outside the courthouse.
I have a question. Are jurors somehow able to leave the courthouse and get into a bus anonymously without anyone seeing them, there has to be some moment of time where they're outside. So does that mean that all the protesters, whichever side they're protesting, that they can see the jurors?
They might have a separate entrance that they go in and out of, but the jurors are going to be revealed who they are. It may not happen
Oh,
right
really?
away. Yeah, it's part of how it all works. I mean, there are circumstances where a jury's identity can be concealed and sealed for good. That's very rare.
Interesting.
So it can be done for
Okay.
a while, or it can be released right away.
Okay.
I know with the George Floyd trials, they did release identities, but
Oh, I
a few
didn't
weeks
realize
ago.
that.
A
Okay.
few weeks ago.
Okay.
And then a lot of times the jurors can, on their own, decide to talk to the press. Even before then, they can reveal
after
who
the
they are,
case.
unless there's some special
Sure.
order that they can't talk to anybody.
Okay.
But in most
Interesting.
cases, their identities are revealed at some point, and I think that has to do with transparency. But you have to imagine in this day and age, the social media age, where everyone's got phones, is our whole system of justice going to get changed, like the way we do these
I know.
jurors? Because we can't have a blind system of justice if jurors fear for their life depending
Mm-hmm.
on what decision they make in regards to the trial in which they're a juror.
Or their
And this is
loved ones'
becoming
lives,
more
or-
and more of an issue. I know that these jurors have been threatened. The judge has had his life threatened. Drew Hernandez, who testified, he's a journalist. He's had death threats. That's not how
I
the
follow him,
system of
actually.
justice is supposed to work. You know,
Right.
you're supposed to. So, are we going to have a different system where, Judge Schroeder said he might not allow TV cameras anymore. He's always
Wow.
allowed kind of a transparent courthouse, and this has really made him
That's
change his
crazy.
mind. As we said yesterday, he's 75 years old. He's the longest serving judge in Wisconsin. And to me, he seems like a real nice guy. We made a report or talked about some of the things that people have criticized him about in this particular trial. There's a lot that you could criticize the prosecutors on too. But to me, he's a normal human being. He's been a judge for decades. He knows what he's doing. He is a little quirky, and he's comfortable where he's at. But
Yeah.
people knocked him for playing Jeopardy with the jurors, and I was thinking about that more. I'm like, that's a nice guy.
Well, what else was he supposed to be doing during that
I
time?
mean, he's just
Like-
that's what a nice person does, is like make people feel comfortable where they are and talk to them and interact with them.
If there wasn't, I actually had sort of a similar thought, and I just don't know enough about court proceedings. If there wasn't anything official he ought to have been doing at that time, my thought is it was either that or they would all just be in their phones. So my thought is like, that's way better. One, get people out of their phones, interacting a little bit, regardless of who you are. That's way better for all of humanity. So if there wasn't something he should have been doing instead, that's a
he
pretty
probably
innocuous.
he probably wishes he could take back the "proud to be American" phone tone
Yeah.
when it rang in the middle. But
Oh man.
so yeah, we're at the end of our show here, and thank you for joining us. We're not going to have a live show until next Wednesday. We have some pre-planned circumstances where we're not going to be able to live stream. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a couple more videos in. We're going to be writing some more show scripts for coming. What was the
future.
one that you sent me today that you're going to do some research on?
The CDC, it's on our Instagram page if you're interested, but just in our stories. But the CDC published a study, it is peer reviewed, showing how much of a greater chance you have of morbidity and hospitalization from COVID-19 if you drink soda, if your exercise index is low, and if you get 7 hours or less of sleep every night. And it controlled, at least to some degree, no study is perfect, but it controls for BMI and many other factors. So that's the good thing about it. It's not like you need to have a perfect BMI to, be able to fight this. It's things that most people can do to at least some degree. And I think it's very interesting.
That'll be a
study.
cool one.
So
The other thing we're going to keep doing is expanding the platforms on which we're broadcasting. We did have an audience member contact us and ask if we could put it in a podcast form. So we're going to figure out how to do that. We do have a Spotify, so we're gonna do like an audio only type file, so people, because I do when I like to stream when I'm streaming and doing stuff, it is better to have like a podcast,
Yeah.
because it will always play when you have YouTube. If you keep your phone in your pocket, it'll push pause.
Yeah.
Or
And you have
skip
to remember the
next
spot
video.
if you have to stop it. And
But
yeah.
I mean, I love YouTube. Don't get me wrong. It's great visual medium, and we're certainly appreciative of that platform. But we're going to keep expanding that part of it. I'm also going to spend the next few days lining up some guests. So we'll have our first guest coming on the show now that we're a little more comfortable with how this is all working.
Yeah. it's
Yesterday,
exciting.
remember what happened yesterday?
Oh gosh. Yes. After we finished yesterday's show, and then we were just looking at it a
We
little
like
bit.
to watch a little bit after just to know what we can do better.
Yes. Like I really need to work on ums and ahs. I'm still really bad. I have reminders written to myself. But anyways,
And I didn't think once about my breathing into the microphone, so I probably did that again.
so yesterday we were trying to listen to a little bit of our show right after finishing recording it. We couldn't hear anything. We're like, oh no, did we just record a whole show and with no sound? And so we're trying to like remove the right things, the speaker. Anyways, turns out we had sound. Very grateful. But
Yeah.
my heart was beating very fast for a couple minutes.
Yep. And we're grateful for you.
We are.
So please continue to support the channel. We
appreciate
you. We love you. Please like,
wish you
subscribe,
would- yes.
share, and
Be well.
take care, everybody. Until next time.